nuclear power, civil rights, flying around the world, democracy, cultural identity. Behind every one of these is a story, and often it's a woman who made it happen. But these women weren't just changing their fields, they were fighting a second battle just to be there in the first place. Because when the world said, "This is a man's job," they said, "Watch me." And they didn't just break barriers, they kicked the door open for generations of women to follow. This is why we celebrate them. This is why we honor Women's History Month. And don't go anywhere, because at the end, we'll reveal the most jaw-dropping warrior women in history. Yep, the real-life Amazons. Let's dive into women's history. In a time when women were expected to stay on the ground, one woman said, "Nah, I'm good," and just took off. Amelia Earhart, pilot, record breaker, fashion icon. Because have you seen those flight goggles? Amelia didn't just fly planes, she shattered expectations. In 1932, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. That's 14 hours of pure I got this energy. Meanwhile, I can barely sit through a 2-hour flight without needing snacks and a nap. But she didn't stop there. Amelia wanted to be the first woman to fly around the world. Unfortunately, her plane disappeared in 1937, and she was never found. Some say she crashed, others say she became a castaway, and a few people, who maybe watch too much sci-fi, think she was abducted by aliens. One thing's for sure, Amelia was fearless. She proved that the sky wasn't the limit, and that sometimes it's okay to get lost, as long as you go down making history. Next up, someone who made history without even leaving her bus seat. Buckle up, because Rosa Parks is next. December 1st, 1955. A woman boards a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and history is about to be made. All right, picture this. You've had a long day. You just want to sit down, mind your business, maybe doom scroll on your phone. Except, wait, it's 1955, so you have to stare out the window like a caveman. But then the bus driver rolls up and says, "Hey, you gotta move. This seat is for white people only." And Rosa Parks said, "Nah." Now, this wasn't just a random moment of rebellion. Rosa was a civil rights activist, and she knew exactly what she was doing. Her arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, aka one of the biggest moves in the civil rights movement. And let me tell you, people committed to this boycott. Imagine you're late for work, it's 90 degrees, and your only ride is your own 2 feet. But people still refuse to take the bus for over a year. That's dedication. I can't even commit to a gym membership for a month. And guess what? It worked. After 381 days, the Supreme Court finally ruled that segregation on buses was unconstitutional. All because Rosa Parks refused to stand up, literally. So next time someone says, "One person can't make a difference," just hit them with a photo of Rosa and say, "Explain this." All right, we've talked about aviation. We've talked about activism. Now, let's talk about science. Time to meet the woman who literally glowed for her work. Marie Curie is up next. In a world where science was ruled by men, one woman dared to say, "Hold my Bunsen burner." All right, let's talk about Marie Curie, aka the Queen of Radiation. The woman won 2 Nobel Prizes, discovered 2 new elements, and probably had a stronger glow than a freshly charged phone screen. But Marie Curie didn't just wake up one day and say, "Let me casually change the entire field of physics and chemistry." No, she had to fight for her place in science. Born in Poland in 1867, she moved to France to study at a university that actually let women in. Because back then, Poland wasn't exactly handing out science degrees to girls. Shocker. Fast forward a few years, and Marie, alongside her husband Pierre Curie, discovered 2 new elements: polonium, named after her home country, Poland, and radium. two elements that were super useful for medicine. Which sounds cool, until you realize that she spent so much time working with radioactive materials that her notebooks are still too dangerous to touch over 100 years later. And here's where things get wild. Back in the day, people thought radiation was totally harmless. In fact, they put radium in everything. Face cream? Radium? Drinking water? Radium. Toothpaste? You better believe Doctors were literally out here like, yes, this toothpaste will make your teeth glow. And people were like, sounds great, sign me up. Of course, working with radioactive stuff before people realized, hey, maybe this is dangerous, had its drawbacks. Marie Curie was constantly exposed to radiation, and let's just say, it wasn't great for her health. But despite everything, she never stopped. Even during World War I, she took her science on the road, helping set up mobile X-ray units to treat wounded soldiers. Marie Curie passed away in 1934 from complications due to radiation exposure. Because again, no one knew back then that glowing in the dark was not a good sign. But her impact? Massive. Thanks to her, we have radiation therapy, nuclear energy, and even space research. Basically, she changed the world, and she did it all while science was still a boys' club. Marie Curie proved that brains, persistence, and a mild disregard for safety protocols can change the world. She walked so other women in STEM could run. Absolute legend. So next time you go for an X-ray or hear someone talk about radioactive elements, just remember, you've got Marie Curie to thank for that. Okay, we've covered planes, protests, and radiation. But now, let's talk about a woman who turned pain into art. A woman who painted her own reality and rocked a unibrow like it was nobody's business. That's right, Frida Kahlo is up next. Frida Kahlo, a woman who said, "Selfies? I've been painting myself for years." Now, Frida's life was not easy. She had polio as a kid, which left her with a limp. Then, at 18, she was in a horrific bus accident that broke almost everything. Spine, ribs, leg, pelvis, you name it. Doctors were like, yeah, you're never walking again. And Frida was like, cool story, but I have things to paint. Since she was stuck in bed for months, she started painting. Mostly self-portraits, because in her own words,
I paint myself because I'm so often alone and because I'm the subject I know best.
Frida's art wasn't just pretty pictures. She painted her pain, her struggles, and her wild, messy, beautiful life. Her paintings were full of symbolism, surrealism, and zero concern for what people thought. She mixed Mexican culture, feminism, and surrealism like it was a spicy art cocktail. And people ate it up. Well, not at first, but eventually she became an international icon. She even had an exhibition in Paris where Pablo Picasso, yes, that Picasso, basically said, damn, I wish I could paint like that. But Frida wasn't just about the art. She was a rebel, a feminist before it was trendy. She wore traditional Mexican Tijuana dresses to embrace her roots, rocked her unibrow like a boss, and called out sexism whenever she saw it. She was married to fellow artist Diego Rivera, which was complicated. They were basically the OG toxic on-again, off-again couple, like a 1930s version of reality TV drama. But no matter what, Frida stayed Frida. She was unapologetic, passionate, and completely unforgettable. Frida died in 1954, but today she's bigger than ever. Her face is everywhere, on t-shirts, murals, tote bags, even nail art. But let's be real, she was so much more than an aesthetic. She was a warrior, a storyteller, a woman who turned her pain into something timeless. So next time you feel like life is knocking you down, just remember, Frida painted through everything, and she did it while serving Luke's. Alright, so we've covered flying legends, civil rights icons, radioactive geniuses, and the queen of self-portraits. But now, let's talk about a woman who didn't just fight for her rights. She practically declared war on the system. Buckle up, because we're about to meet Emmeline Pankhurst. Okay, picture this. It's the early 1900s, and women have basically zero rights. No vote, no say in politics, and society's idea of women's duties is, well, let's just say, not great. But Emmeline Pankhurst? Oh, she was not having it.
I am not having it.
Born in 1858, Emmeline Pankhurst grew up in a world where women were expected to stay in their place. But instead of accepting that nonsense, she started the Women's Social and Political Union, aka the We're Done Asking Nicely squad of the suffrage movement. Before Emmeline, protests were mostly peaceful. But she and her suffragettes were like, yeah, that's cute, but have you tried breaking stuff? That's right. They didn't just march and wave signs. They threw bricks, they went on hunger strikes, and they made politicians very uncomfortable. In other words, absolute queens. Now, the government was not a fan of women demanding rights. Shocker. So they threw Emmeline and her fellow suffragettes in jail. But did that stop her? Nope. In prison, she and the others went on hunger strikes. So what did the authorities do? They force-fed them through tubes. Yep, they were that scared of women gaining power. And the fight came at a cost. Emmeline's own sister, Mary Jane Clark, was arrested and force-fed multiple times. Just 2 days after her release, she died, becoming one of the movement's first martyrs. But Emmeline kept fighting, and guess what? It worked. In 1918, British women finally won the right to vote, at least the ones over 30. Emmeline Pankhurst didn't just change laws, she changed history. Without her, who knows how long women would have had to wait to get the vote? So next time you hear someone say, ugh, voting doesn't even matter, just show them a picture of Emmeline Pankhurst and say, try telling her that. But listen, if you think Emmeline and the suffragettes were tough, wait till you hear about the women who didn't just fight for their rights, they fought in actual wars. Because history wasn't just made in the streets and in parliament. Nope. Some women made history on the battlefield, with spears, swords, and zero patience for their enemies. And there's no better example than the Dahomey Amazons, a real-life, all-female army that struck fear into their enemies for over 200 years. Let's meet the most hardcore women warriors you've never heard of. All right, folks, we've talked about women who fought for their rights. But now, we're talking about women who fought with actual weapons. Meet the Dahomey Amazons, an elite all-female military force so fierce, European colonizers literally called them Amazons after the warrior women from Greek mythology. Except, unlike the myths, these women were 100% real. So, who were they? The Dahomey Amazons, locally known as the Agojie, were the personal bodyguards and frontline warriors of the King of Dahomey, modern-day Benin, from the 1600s to the late 1800s. And when I say elite soldiers, I mean they trained harder than the men, fought in the most dangerous battles, and had a strict no marriage, no kids, only war policy. They were expert hand-to-hand fighters, sharpshooters, and master strategists. And let's not forget, they would literally run into battle first while the men followed behind. Okay, let's talk toughness. These women trained by jumping into thorn bushes to prove their pain tolerance. They would decapitate enemies with machetes and climb walls with their bare hands. Meanwhile, I pull a muscle just getting out of bed in the morning. And their legacy? Still alive today. Their story inspired the warriors in Black Panther's Dora Milaje, and the world is finally recognizing how legendary these women were. So there you have it. 5 legendary women who didn't just exist in history books, they shaped them. They flew higher, fought harder, spoke louder, and broke every rule society tried to put on them. And here's the thing. History isn't just about them. It's about all the women who refuse to sit still and stay silent. Because when women challenge the world, they change it. But if you thought history was wild, just wait till you hear about a place where haircuts are illegal, denim is banned, and the leader claims he never needed a toilet. Yep, we're talking about North Korea's most bizarre secrets. If you think dictators are all serious business, think again, because this story is crazier than fiction. Click here to watch, and I'll see you there.